What's up, everybody? Welcome here to Pop Culture Philosophers. I am Rockin Robbie Billups. It's Friday. That means it's time for the Rex and the Robbie Show. And tonight, very appropriately for the season, we're discussing the best ghost movies. So I guess I got to say station, pop, pop, boo. Let's bring in Rex. How you doing, Rex?
What's going on, buddy? So, all right. So I think we've covered all the bases here. We did werewolves, we did vampires, and today we're doing ghost movies. So I think we've covered the bases. GT Keys, Zahak, what's up, guys? Thanks for joining us, man, on this not too bad Friday. We were just Sheldon, what's up, buddy? We were just talking about the weather, me and Robbie. So getting a little cold, talking about when playing that game at home where you wait until you finally have to turn the heat on. I've had to turn the heat on, man. We had a hard freeze the other night. So
yeah, I turned my heat on a few days ago, but tonight the AC is going to have to come back on. That's just the way it is around here.
Oh, it's getting that warm? We're not going to get that warm. I don't think my
it's going to be up into it's going to be back up into the 70s throughout this week. So, and down here, we got that humid heat. So
we're that low 60s, I think, and mid 60s, and that's the best we can hope for. I think it's supposed to break to 71 tomorrow for like a minute, but that's about it. So
yeah, sometimes down here it'll be like almost 80 degrees, like on Thanksgiving. So you never know.
In the Midwest, they had snow, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I saw that. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like dude shoveling it. I'm like, man, that sucks.
So we're going to be talking about ghost stories, ghost movies, hauntings, stuff like that, right? And no, we're not going to draw a line between ghosts and poltergeists. It's all lumped in the same thing, those supernatural beings from the other worlds. And we want you to join the conversation. So let us know what you think about the questions that we talk about in the movies that we talk about. But first of all, Rex, do you personally believe in ghosts?
All right. I'm going to share a story with you, right? Not really. I'm a real kind of see it, kind of feel it sort of thing. And my daughter's mom, my ex-wife, when we first moved in together, I lived in an apartment high rise, right? And it was an older building, right? And you had two types of tenants. You had like real old people that lived there for like a really long time. And then you had younger people, and I was a younger person at that time. They're moving in, so kind of replacing each other. So I have to imagine lots of people died, right? Whatever, in that building at some point in time. And my daughter's mom, my ex-wife, had moved in with me. Now, she was really into that sensitive ghost thing and really kind of thing, right? And we're sitting on the floor, and we had a cat at the time, and we're just talking, and she's telling me she feels, there's a lot of spirits here and all kinds of stuff. And she says, I can feel it right now. And, I'm a real visual sort of guy. So, I'm like, whatever. Okay. But all of a sudden, she says, I can feel it right now. And the cat was sitting in my lap, kind of back started arching. And then all of a sudden she jumped right out of my lap. Okay. Literally she was sleeping about, 10 seconds ago. And all of a sudden she wakes up.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I felt something at that moment in time. So it had to make me kind of re-examine it. But then when my daughter was growing up, when she started being scared of ghosts, and not like a toddler scared of the dark kind of thing, but she was like 12 or, something where the concept of spiritual stuff was really starting to form in her head. She was afraid of ghosts. And I said something to her that it was one of my, I got to take credit. It was one of my best dad days. I get an A+ on that day. I said, and her mom believed in it. So her mom, I didn't want to tell her that it didn't exist and discredit her mom. So I said, you know what? I said, I don't know. And I shared that story that her mom and I had in that apartment building. And I said, I don't know, hon. I said, I do know this though. Okay. As scary as ghosts may seem, I've never read a story, it's always hypothetical, whatever, that a ghost killed somebody or whatever. I do know that people have killed people, okay, all right, every single day on this planet. So I said, I don't know if ghosts exist or not, but I'm not really afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of other people in the world, evil people in the world. Yeah, so I said, don't waste your brain power worried about ghosts. Worry about the evil people in the world, okay? Because those are tangible things that can really hurt you. And she took that, and to this day, we haven't really had a conversation about it, so I don't know how she leans. I think she leans a little bit more towards her mom than towards me. But that experience was enough for me to say, you know what, there are things in the world that I don't understand and I don't really know. And before I right out of hand say that, no, they don't exist, maybe I should keep an open mind. I do believe that I am not sensitive to that plane of reality, if you will.
Yeah.
So even if somebody who's more sensitive can see it, I probably won't. You
Okay.
know, I just feel like it's kind of that kind of the way I'm wired.
Yeah, definitely. There are so many things that we don't know, right? And it's easy to be dismissive of things, but you never know, right? Me personally, I
Agreed.
don't know if I really believe in ghosts, like souls of the dead haunting places and things like that. But I don't know, man. I'll tell you one thing though. I am totally into ghost stories. I'm into like ghost hunts, like watching those ghost adventures and all that kind of stuff. Like they're silly, but I have a lot of fun with it.
Right.
And I love to, even in my real life at times, suspend my disbelief, because I do think that belief is a tool. And the more you believe in something, maybe you do have these experiences. And it is always creepy when your cat or your dog or something just starts staring at some empty spot in the room and then like starts like hissing or something. You're like, what's going on? Like, what's there? Tell me.
So Avon B, Perry, my road trip. Welcome, guys. So Eddie Von B says, I never believe in ghosts. Yeah, I'm with you too. You know, I think that it's I'm kind of like Robbie too. It's kind of cool to think about the concept of its own, because I think that no matter what, we all think about death at some point, right? And that's in relationship to ghosts, you know, that you don't want the journey to necessarily be over. You know, that's kind of a depressing thought, you know. So ghosts kind of work into that realm, if you will.
Yes, and they always make for riveting, thrilling stories ever since we first started telling stories to each other. Ghosts
Yes.
always represent things like trauma. They represent memories, unburied or buried things from your past coming back to haunt you later in life, stuff like that.
Right. I
I just
agree. I
recently
agree.
watched the two most recent It movies, and I don't know if that's not really a ghost story, but it kind of deals with some of those same themes. So, we're here to talk about the movies. So I'm excited now. What is one of your favorite ghost movies? And you out there in the chat, start throwing them out.
Yeah, start letting us know. All right. So I'll start off because we kind of alluded to this, I think, last Friday. The Shining. It's a ghost story, people. Okay, straight up. Okay. So I don't want to hear that, you know, whatever. It's a ghost story. Okay, manifesting itself into a crazed mind, if you will. But it's definitely a ghost story. Um, you know, I love Stephen King. I love the movie. But you know, and I've talked about this before, I think, with you, the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, the inspiration for Stephen King to write the novel. That only increased my interest and, you know, being a fan of The Shining, because, you know, I got to find out with the tour and stuff how he came up with the concept, and it was a very interesting story. It obviously was not, the movie was not shot at the Stanley Hotel, but Stephen King and his wife driving back, or trying to drive back to Boulder, got caught in a snowstorm, and the only place they could stop was at the Stanley Hotel, which was at that time off season, right? So there was like a bartender and some other, you know, people around the hotel, but there were no guests. They weren't fully staffed, obviously, and they stayed there for like 2-3 nights or whatever until they can get back, and that's when he came up. So, you know, that's why there's a bartender, you know, in the movie, in the books, you know, so that's where he came up with the inspiration. So I thought that was really interesting. And it was kind of a spooky place, man. I got to tell you, there was a side theater. Okay. So the guy who originally built the Stanley Hotel, super rich guy, he actually invented celluloid film and then ended up selling it to Kodak Eastman. All right. So he became like super rich, developed tuberculosis. They advised him, you got to get to a you know, higher elevation, you know, to help you. And it worked. And he built this huge mansion, which obviously is a hotel. And then his wife was a performer, I think, of some type, opera singer or something. So he built off the side a theater for her, like with a stage and everything else. And they take you through there. And I got to tell you, as we're all standing around on the walking tour and the tour guide's talking about it, the door that we came in suddenly slammed shut. Now, understand, there was no wind that day, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I get it. This is a little Disney, a little action, right? You know, okay, I get it. You know, you're talking about it, and then the door slams shut. On the way out, I'm looking, dude. I'm looking for where is the you know, mechanism. I'm looking at the door jam. I'm like, nothing, dude. It looked like the original door that was there. So I don't know what made that door slam shut. It was a warm day. There was no wind. which my daughter and I kind of complained about because it was a little hot standing out there. At that elevation, you're closer to God anyway. But I couldn't find anything, dude. Nothing. So
that's spooky. And The Shining is a fantastic movie. It is, and I know that
it is.
I know that Stephen King doesn't like that version of it, and I think Mick Garris did one later on in the 90s. That was like a TV miniseries or something, and that's more accurate to the book. But the movie is not just chilling, not just expertly done, not just well performed, not just amazing music, but it is heavily influential, especially on the current generation. Like all this new stuff, like from A24, some of their darlings like Ty West, Robert Eggers, they cite that as their favorite horror film of all time, right? And it's a ghost story, and it is about the ghost of addiction coming back, and then even in Doctor Sleep, which is the follow-up, that movie I don't think is near as good as The Shining, but it does a good job of how it can be generational, these kind of things that go from father to son, or from father to daughter, or mother to son, or mother to daughter, whatnot, right? So The Shining is definitely a ghost story, and 100% one of the best, if not, I think it's the best. It would be at the top of my list.
So we got Marcus there. It was Cornelius. I think I see Cornelius the squirrel's ghost in my house, but I haven't told my daughter.
That's sad.
I'm kidding. Hopefully he's living a great life in Medford, New Jersey, in the woods, wherever,
for sure,
stocking up on nuts, and and that's we're going with that. All right. My daughter would be devastated, absolutely devastated. But long story, Marcus happened to be viewing one of our shows when Cornelius the squirrel came up. But yeah, so Shining's probably, I guess, number one for me.
Yeah, I love The Shining. Another one I want to highlight is The Fog, and I saw that it was mentioned by Eddie Von P, I believe. I love The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog, like he said, not the remake with Tom Welling or whatever. That remake sucks, man. That movie's terrible. But I love The Fog, right? And when I first watched it, I was like, it's an okay John Carpenter film. It's kind of like middle of the road. It's not one of the worst, but it's not one of the best. But every time I watch this movie, I love it more and more and more. And it's gone from like a middle of the road Carpenter movie to one of my favorite Carpenter movies. I think it's expertly paced, incredible first act in this movie. The way they set everything up, it starts off with dude, what's his name? John Houseman, is that his name? Telling the ghost story at the campfire. So we get that, and then it's just got this deliberate, slow pace, this moody atmosphere, and it's still one of my favorite Carpenter scores. And I just think it's a really great, tight, solid ghost story about how terrible this town was, and how some of our institutions and communities are built on terrible things. You know what I'm saying? But I love The Fog. What do you think about that one?
I love The Fog as well. Obviously, the original John Carpenter one. I didn't even bother to watch the remake. Friends of mine told me it was just brutal, so I didn't bother wasting my time. But I love John Carpenter as a whole. His movies have been part of my youth. I think there was a period when we would just all go and watch horror films, one right after the other. I agree with Eddie Von B. I feel like calling him Eddie Van Halen. This, and I mentioned this about vampire movies, and I'm thinking even for ghost movies, it's even more prevalent in that it's such a wide range, right? We talked about werewolves, how I was kind of limited. At some point, the werewolf's got to wolf out, and then there's carnage, and there's only so many ways you can tell it. So really, you're depending on your special effects to be really amazing, but it's always the same story. Man wolfs out, full moon, runs out, starts killing people, that kind of thing. Vampires obviously leaving a much wider range, but I feel like ghost movies are even more than vampire movies. There's so many different ways that you can incorporate it. So when Eddie Von B says Scrooge, my next two, I got to tell you, are comedies. Okay. And that's what I love about the genre, is that you can do that. All right. So I'm going to bang the next two out back to back here. So obviously Beetlejuice, and obviously the original Ghostbusters. Okay. It's such a huge, the genre is such a huge just piece of territory that you can do anything you want with it. And obviously you can turn it into a comedy. Beetlejuice, Michael Keaton, I mean, my God, he was phenomenal. Sorry, Jay, no Rex Cap in this show. And then Ghostbusters obviously became iconic, during that period. And they've tried to remake that. Yeah, I'm surprised nobody's tried to remake Beetlejuice on any level, which is kind of interesting.
I'm glad. They keep rumoring that we're going to get the long-awaited sequel finally, and we'll see one day if that ever happens. But I think as just a single movie, Beetlejuice is amazing. I mean, it's so Tim Burton, but it's got this. So it's so Tim Burton, so it's dark, but it's got this sense of fantasy, this dark fantasy, and
Yes.
I loved that movie when I was a kid, and I watched that so many times, and the Danny Elfman score is amazing. And also Ghostbusters, very important movie in my childhood, 100%. Led to that awesome animated series and an awesome toy line. So,
dude, I'd be listening to the soundtrack, on the radio, I remember. I mean, it was like, top 40. It was every other song, it seemed like they were playing it, right? Yeah. In terms of Beetlejuice, I mean, it's Michael Keaton. I mean, the film was wonderfly done. Alec Baldwin and I forget her name all of a sudden.
Gina Davis, yeah.
Gina Davis, right. They were great, but it was Michael Keaton that pulled that off with his antics, his craziness. He just played a perfect role. It was, so he really made the movie. I couldn't imagine casting anybody else in that movie and it working the way it did.
Oh, for sure. For sure. He was, and a lot of people, it's so crazy because a lot of people don't remember or realize now, I guess, that, he was a comedy actor, right?
Mm-hmm,
so when he got cast as Batman, that was like a big deal. Like people were like, what? Yeah. This comedian? It would be like they cast, I mean, he wasn't quite a Jim Carrey, but kind of like what happened with Tom Hanks, right? He started in comedy and then moved into other things. Yes, but his performance in Beetlejuice sells it, man. Everybody in that movie is great. It's just such a good movie. And Ghostbusters, it's just unfortunate they've never been able to recapture that magic. I mean, I think they did with part 2 because I personally do like 2. I know a lot of people don't, but they've never been. I didn't even like the new Afterlife movie. So there's something very, very particular about that first Ghostbusters movie where they just hit it. They just hit it, and very genuinely scary. When I was a kid, both of those movies have things in it that are very scary to a kid, but it works. It works so well. All right, next one I'll go with then is Poltergeist. I think Poltergeist is an absolutely phenomenal film. Tobe Hooper directed, Steven Spielberg produced. You can definitely, because there's all this stuff about like somebody said something one time and this newspaper guy like ran with it. There are all these rumors that Tobe Hooper didn't direct that movie, really, that it was kind of Steven Spielberg ghost directing it, no pun intended, but you can totally pick up Tobe Hooper's style in that movie. It just has that Spielberg polish, which was the reason, I think, why it had that crossover appeal where it became a family film. But what's crazy about it is even though you look at it, you're like, oh, that's like a PG-13 type ghost movie or whatever. It's really scary. It's like really well done. It does have that Spielberg vibe to it, but it's still, Spielberg movies were kind of scary, especially to kids back in those days, right? When I was a kid watching things like even the Indiana Jones movies, there were things that were kind of scary about them, but I was always appealed to things. I always was drawn to things that were scary and spooky. But Poltergeist, amazing story about a family, but then when all the craziness happens, it's just such a great film.
Well, I think the magic to Poltergeist, and it, it may be a kind of a PG rating, but I think the magic to Poltergeist was it frightened you without having to use a lot of gore, a lot of, kind of those kind of gimmicks. The premise was what was so scary, that all of a sudden your kids disappeared, you don't know where, and then, as parents, the frightening feeling of that, and then you find out what? This normal middle-class family, what? They're ghosts? What are you talking about? And their ability to scare you without having to use those horrific effects, whatever you want to call it, I think was the real magic. Comic book 1962. I agree, man. Michael Keaton is a singular talent. Eddie Von B. I forgot about that one. Amityville Horror. That would have made my list probably. Marcus, yes, the Poltergeist was a cursed franchise. I mean, that was weird, wasn't it? All the people dying, the little girl that was, that was frightening.
Yeah. Speaking of frightening, did you ever see Poltergeist 2? Like, there's this.
I feel like I did.
There's like, I don't think it's as good for sure,
really
but
is.
there's this. Yeah. There's this like old dude in it with like a top hat or something. He's super scary. Super
Yeah.
creepy. Super
But I
creepy.
felt like with Poltergeist 2, they kind of went away from what made Poltergeist work, and they were trying to use the shock value, you know,
Yeah.
to scare you again. And that's what Poltergeist didn't do, which I really enjoyed, you know. So the face peeling and maggots got me as a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Yeah. Poltergeist is a damned classic. What else you got on your list, Rex?
All right, so I'm gonna go with some pretty obvious ones. Again, this is why I like the genre; it's so wide open. But I'll bang these two out together as well. The Sixth Sense and then Ghost, obviously. You know, it's that the genre allows you to do this, right? So Ghost more of a romantic kind of film. Sixth Sense was, you know, kind of a cerebral kind of gotcha kind of film, you know, at the end. So and they were both really good movies and well done. You know, Patrick Swayze, big fan, you know, Roadhouse, Ghost, all the stuff. He showed some range as well. So, yeah, so, you know, not what you would normally think is a scary ghost movie, you know, a different kind of ghost story, if you will.
Yeah. Man, my mom loved Ghost so much when I was a kid. So it was we had to watch it too many times. So I haven't watched it since I was a kid because I was like, my mom and my dad, they were both big Patrick Swayze fans. And I just had too much Patrick Swayze in my young life. And I only now just started to really appreciate movies like Roadhouse and Next of Kin and whatnot. So but Sixth Sense is an amazing film. Like, holy cow. I worked at the movie theater when that was out. And that movie was still in theaters. This never happens anymore. That movie was in theaters for a long, long time. And then when it got nominated for the Academy Awards, it stayed even longer. That movie was already released on VHS and DVD, and it was still playing at my theater. Like, it was, and it still had people go see it all the time because that was one of those movies that you wanted to go back and rewatch after knowing the ending. And then when you watch it again, you're like, oh God, I'm so stupid that I didn't notice any of this stuff. Like, it's all set up. It's all perfect. Right?
Yeah, it was so well done that even though you had that gotcha moment, like one of the easiest movies to have a spoiler. Oh yeah, Bruce Willis is dead. Oh, what? Okay. But even after the reveal, you could go back and like, oh, remember that scene? That's why, right? So that's really magical how they were able to do that. Even though you now know, you know, the gotcha moment, you can go back and try to catch stuff that you didn't see.
Yeah. Yeah. I love movies like that. Movies and books and comics and things where it rewards repeated viewings and readings and stuff like that. Those are some great picks right there. I want to throw in two foreign films, I guess we could say, but one is a Japanese film and one is a Mexican film. The Japanese film is Ju-on, The Grudge. So we know the American version, which is just called The Grudge with Sarah Michelle Gellar. I'm not really digging on that, but the original Japanese movie is intensely scary to me. It's creepy, that little kid, but it's just a series of tales about this these ghosts, right? And especially with Ju-on 2. Ju-on 2 has some really creepy moments as well. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but I think that's amazing. And it kind of that along with the Ringu really kicked off that whole J horror kind of thing that started coming into American cinema. The other one is Guillermo del Toro Spanish-Mexican film, Devil's Backbone. This movie is another genuinely creepy, somber tale that's really good. If you like things like Pan's Labyrinth and other works from Del Toro and you've never seen Devil's Backbone, you got to. It's about this orphanage during the Spanish Civil War. And there's a bomb that fell in the orphanage and it never went off. So there's just this inert bomb there that could go off at some point. And so then this ghost of this kid starts haunting this place while all this other stuff's going on. Like they got this, there's like a treasure trove of gold underneath it or something like that. That this general's coming to try to get. There's all this conflict going on, but at the core of it, it's about the trauma that the war does to these kids, you know? And it's like a really nuanced, subtle film that is also creepy as hell, man.
So Stevie B in the house. Well, no, I wouldn't become a ghost because then I couldn't eat the taco. See? Very simple answer, Stevie B.
Good answer. I've never seen that one. Quiden? I've never seen that one.
I haven't either. And I haven't seen the two movies you mentioned either, Robbie.
I would
All right.
recommend them for sure.
So this is my surprise of the show. Okay.
Hold
And I
on,
don't know if
Tijuana
you've ever
Man.
seen this one.
Tijuana
No, no, no.
Man. That's a
Tijuana
good
Man.
one.
Ghost Story from 1981. It had
Yes.
Fred Astaire and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Have you seen this one?
Oh yes, I've seen it. We've covered it on Dylan's Horror Show. I own it. I love that movie. I think it's really good.
love that movie. First of all, it was the last film that that both Fred Astaire and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. ever did. That was the end of it. But the way that unfolded, and it was just that horrific scene when the car's sinking and she's still alive and you see her clawing it. Oh my God. That was just, and there weren't a lot of gory scenes, it just, the way that it kind of, unfolded just scared you, like, oh crap, kind of thing. So that was an excellent movie.
Yeah, I love that movie too. I just blanked though. What were we talking about? Well, the Ghost Story.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I love that movie because it's kind of like this bridge. Like, so that movie's like 81, 82, something, right? Like right? So that's like the rise. We're in the middle of the rise of the slasher era. Like we're right there in the thick of like some of these gnarly, super sleazy slasher movies that I just adore. So what Ghost Story does is it takes that classic vibe, including the music of like the classic horror picture, and it's bringing it into the slasher era, right? And it's with some genuinely good practical effects, like when the corpse that they see and stuff. Like that's a really good movie and very much underappreciated, I think. The Chowder Society, right? Is that what it is? They all gather around, tell stories, and then
telling ghost stories and stuff. And
yeah,
it's just the entire film was so well done. I mean, the whole premise of it, the one dude in the group, sleeps with the woman and then but doesn't really because he's impotent, but he brags to all his friends, and then she's there and she outs him and they push her down. I have to say, I realized that you think she's dead and you're panicking and everything else, but man, somebody's got to check the pulse, right? Seriously. That was my only flawed movie. Like somebody just say, hey, before we throw her in the car and throw that in the lake, maybe we could check her pulse, right? Am I saying here? Yeah. So that was my only problem, but the rest of the movie was so well done.
Yeah, and another movie about the past coming back to haunt you, right?
Yeah.
So another movie kind of in that vein, because it's around from that same era, is George C. Scott's The Changeling. We actually just covered this a few weeks ago for Horror Fest on PCP Movie Night. I love that movie. The score is incredible. The idea, the story where he uncovers this like horrific thing that happened where this dude swapped out his son for like an orphan and like killed his son because he didn't want his inheritance to go to somebody who had a disability or something like that. Bruh, that movie on that emotional core works. But what really sells that entire movie outside of the score, the amazing way that just the littlest things happen, the piano key, the door opening, right? Yeah. And it genuinely just keeps building up. But George C. Scott, a performance for the ages, man. His Absolutely. Performance, that movie lives or dies on him, and his reactions, his responses, his choices, his delivery of lines, so freaking amazing in that movie, man.
Well, he was an amazing actor. I mean, you remember Patton and everything else. He was just phenomenal. But sometimes
he's in the greatest psychological thriller of the 90s, Exorcist 3. So
yeah, that's right.
Great in that one too.
All right, so here's my thumbs down one. So I gave you all my thumbs up one. Here's my thumbs down one. The Blair Witch Project. That was brutally bad. Now, I appreciate it was one of the first movies that was primarily marketed through the internet. Okay. And they I think that the marketing people for that film, they were geniuses. All right. And the way that they marketed, got a buzz about it. Everybody was talking about it. We got to go see it. We go see it. And I walked out of that movie theater with motion sickness. Okay. And I was so tired of seeing that actress's nose hairs throughout the movie. Okay. Get a tissue, lady. Okay. Blow that nose. Okay. Please. I mean, I don't think I've ever been as disappointed with the buzz, okay, and the marketing, and then go and say, kidding me, this is it? Somebody running around with a camcorder? okay, making me feel nauseous because the camera's moving. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be sick. Okay, I was so disappointed, and it was just not a good film. I really didn't think it was on any level.
I don't know how I feel about the film as its film, right? Like, I haven't seen it in a while. I was obsessed with it when it came out, though. So me personally, I would say that I am a fan of the Blair Witch Project, because when that movie came out, I'm like, I just graduated high school, I believe. And is it 98, 99, something like that? So I remember hearing about it, and the way that they sold that movie was, we thought that this was real, right? And then, like, even going into the movie, I knew that the movie wasn't real, but I thought that all the stuff, the legend surrounding the movie was real. But it wasn't. All that stuff was made up, right? But what I loved about that movie, and first of all, it was the only time in my life the movie ends and like nobody in the audience says anything. It was like, we were all just like, is that it? I am kind of bummed by the ending. I think there could have been more there, but at the same time, I think it works for what it was trying to do. Now I understand the motion sickness stuff, and it launched this whole era of found footage movies, right? Some good, some not so good. But it made me realize all I need is a camcorder and I can make a movie. I can do something. And so, like, me and my friends, we were inspired. We got this playground right next to our local cemetery. It's the oldest cemetery in Alabama. And there's a playground next to it that we call Dead Children's Playground, and it's allegedly haunted. We would go there. We go to the forest. We do all that. We'd bring our camcorders, put on the night vision, and be like, "Did you hear that noise?" Like, basically amp ourselves up and get freaked out, at sounds of twigs and squirrels and stuff. The ghost of Cornelius, even. So I definitely want to rewatch it to see how it holds up. I rewatched it probably like 10 years ago, and I was kind of like surprised that it still kind of worked for me. So I like it, but I understand why a lot of people don't. And at that time, I don't think it is anymore, but at that time, it was like the most profitable movie ever made because of how little they spent on it.
Right. I mean, I appreciate, it's a turning point in movie history, and I appreciate what they did. And it was the first time anybody said, you know what? I don't need that big marketing budget. I don't need it, trailers on TV. I can market this solely through the internet and create that buzz. So that I appreciate what they did there. That was an amazing thing they accomplished. Low budget indie film, literally shot with a camcorder. Okay. And they created enough buzz that everybody was talking about it, and everybody wanted to go see it. Unfortunately, would have worked better if they actually put a good movie behind that along with the buzz. Okay. Yeah. Because I think that what ended up failing was, at least for the time being, obviously the world's a very different place today. We do everything on the internet, but at the time, I think it kind of suppressed that marketing tool, because all of a sudden, I'm one of those guys. Well, I'm never listening to these internet rumors about how great something is again and go watch a film, because I just wasted, my money, my time. And now I feel like I'm going to yak up my lunch. So it kind of had a negative effect in that sense. But obviously, what they did there, that was tremendous. I mean, nobody thought that was a possibility. You needed a big budget, a big marketing budget.
They didn't even have a script or nothing, man. They would just they put these people out there. They put them out there in the woods, and they gave them the ideas of the story, but then they would leave notes behind when they were sleeping or something. So to be like, hey, you're supposed to be doing this today. Act like this. Like, you're freaking out because you're lost. And then they tell the other person, like, you got rid of the map. And so they would get these little clues about what to do. So a lot of that stuff is kind of authentic, but I understand. That would be an interesting one to cover for a PCP movie night, because we get a wide range of
I think you will. I think you would. I think that would be an interesting one.
Wide range of opinions. All right. I'll wrap us up with 4 quick ones then. And all 4 of these I think are genuine classics. First of all, The Others with Nicole Kidman. So everybody was talking about The Sixth Sense, but a few years later, The Others came out, and I love that movie. I love the cinematography. It's mostly, at least appears like it's just lit by candlelight, but it is a really good, solid film. The Entity with Barbara Hershey, a fantastic movie about a ghost that's sexually assaulting this woman, but nobody will believe her. It's from 82 or something. We covered it on Dylan's Horror Show back in April Loved that movie. Thought it was super strong. And I think it's his most viewed video still of ours over there. The Haunting. And I'm talking about the 1963 one, not the one with Liam Neeson from like 98 or whatever. That movie sucks. But the original Haunting, directed by Robert Wise, is a perfect explanation or a perfect example of how to do so much with so little, right? That movie works for me. And, you know, of course, the whole story is these people are there to do a paranormal investigation on this house, and it turns out it is haunted. And then the 70s version of The Haunting basically is The Legend of Hell House, based on the Richard Matheson book. Roddy McDowall's in that one. It's kind of the same premise almost as The Haunting, but for the 70s. And so it's got that 70s kind of flair, and it's a little bit more gnarly, and it works so well for me. So those are 4 that I want to finish out with, because I think those are some really solid recommendations if you haven't seen them. So, seen any of those, Rex?
I have not. Out of those 4, believe it or not, I'm pretty mainstream. So with the ghost stories, you know, it depends. You know, it's got to be something kind of like I told you about the werewolf movies. There has to be something there that's drawing me there. It can't just be, oh, it's a ghost story type thing. So
yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, it is a wide ranging genre. I mean, you know, you can do a lot of things if you're creative enough. So that's why I like it, though.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's wrap up here, man. Thank you for this conversation. It was great. Thank you to
My
everybody
pleasure.
in the chat joining us.
I have a surprise for you. Okay, so Monday, Robbie's on our channel, the EXP, the Experience on YouTube. So Monday, we're going to have a special guest, my friend. It's going to be a rockin' show. Ken Hazer is coming into our building and is going to be with us. He's bringing some of his original art covers that will be available for sale. Please join us. He's going to be here for the whole show. So Q&A period. If you ever had any questions, you know, I'm excited. I'm a huge Ken Hazer fan. John was on vacation, shocker. And when I told him Ken Hazer was coming, he's down at the Jersey Shore, about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And he says, I'm probably not going to be there Monday. I'll be with my wife down the shore. And I tell him, oh, Ken Hazer's going to be here on Monday. And he says, I'll be back for the show on Monday. So it's going to be a fun time, my friend. If you have questions for Ken, you're gonna see him. We're going to chat with him for a couple hours. And anybody has questions, that's work. He's just phenomenal. His use of negative space and stuff. So if you have questions, he's going to be with us on Monday's show from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on The Experience.
That's awesome. I'm very excited for that then, man. Everybody be sure to join us this upcoming Monday. We got Ken Hazer in the building. That's going to be awesome. I'm going to ask him stuff about Fright Night, because he's been working on that Fright Night comic too. That's a busy man. That's a busy man. I'm surprised he was able to carve out time to come in and do it.
I know. So we're very happy he was able to do it.
Entire time, won't he? Nick will have him drawing the entire time. He's like, draw this.
No, I don't think so. But
dude,
it should be a great show.
Heck yeah. Has Nick got his show tonight?
He does. The original art show on The Experience, 7 p.m. Eastern. Some great pieces. I think he has a Black Adam original artboard that will be available for sale. So definitely tune in tonight, the XP, 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Nice. And if you want to continue the horror conversation, join us tomorrow night for Dylan's Horror Show, where we're talking about It and It Chapter 2, the Andy Muschietti films, and then another double feature on Monday night for PCP Movie Night. We're talking about Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. So the fun never ends on Horror Fest. Rex, thank you for joining us. You out there in the chat, thank you for joining us. Stay spooky, pop, pop, boo. Go watch a ghost movie and let us know in the comments what you thought about it. We're dipping out. Y'all have a good one. Stay